Daniel Spichtinger. He is very much into politics and also open science, open data, open access. He consults them a lot of projects there and institutions, and he will now give a talk about data management plans, which is also very important topic. And I think every researcher who is now running for funding need a data management plan. Daniel, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Raman. I'm happy to present, and let me just check whether everything works with sharing the screen. So I'm going to present a little bit about data management plans, but it's a little bit going even more into detail, if you like. So it's a bit looking into the very specific issue of licensing and what data management plans in Horizon 2020 say about that. So in a way, it's actually a little bit complementary to the previous presentation, because the speaker said he will focus on the findability a little bit in FAIR. And my talk is then more connected with the R in FAIR, the reusability, because licensing is quite an important aspect of that. So given that we are a little bit behind in the time, I will go over the introduction rather quickly. So this is more for audiences which are maybe not so expert, namely the fact that research data is becoming more and more important, and that therefore research funders also put more and more emphasis on it. And we also moved a little bit from the terminology of open data, which is still a bit used, but we also have now FAIR data, as was previously mentioned, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And as part of the R, the licensing of data. So basically what I looked at then are Creative Commons licenses, which are in a way a sub-aspect of the whole copyright regime. So they are not necessarily opposed to copyright, but they are a variation in the sense that if you have something which is copyrighted, and often you can also see this printed somewhere, it says all rights reserved. And Creative Commons only reserves some rights, and some rights are not reserved. And what kind of rights are reserved, that depends on the license that the author or the data generator in this case gives. And you see here the 6 Creative Commons licenses, plus there is CC0, which is not exactly a license, but it's basically releasing everything in the public domain. So why is this important for research data? And that's a little bit also the angle where I come from, is that already in Horizon 2020, there was in the funding project, the funding program from the EU, there was, we had an open data pilot, which was extended. And there was a recommendation at the time, so not a requirement, to provide an appropriate, as they called it, Creative Commons license. And in Horizon Europe, the new program, this has been strengthened. So if you make your data open, and again, there is this as open as possible, as closed as necessary principle. So there are also good reasons not to make your data open. But if you decide to make it open, you have to give it a CC BY, a CC0, or an equivalent license, except if you have a good reason not to do so. And for metadata, CC0 is obligatory. There's also a side issue about Creative Commons licenses for publications, not for data, but I'm not going to go into this side issue. So that's the kind of the context. And what I did was, over the summer, I did the so-called Creative Commons certificate, which is a certificate from the organization Creative Commons telling you how Creative Commons licenses work. And there you have to do a final project. And I decided in the final project to look at Creative Commons licenses and how they are managed and mentioned in Horizon 2020 data management plans. So it was a nice, in a way, it was building nicely on a project that both Raman knows very much about and also Susanne, namely in a previous project, we had developed a collection of 840 publicly available data management plans from Horizon, which is available at that URL. And if you haven't looked at it and you're interested in data management plans, it's a nice collection. But it's not quality screened. So we took all the data management plans. We looked at, are these really data management plans? Are they really public? And then we put them on the repository. This was a separate study. The results are reported in another publication. But what I did is I took this collection and I analyzed what are people saying about Creative Commons licenses within this collection. I did this automatically first, and then I did a manual double checking. So what are the findings? First of all, basically from the 840 data management plans, a lot of them, more than nearly 60%, I would say, don't really contain any reference to Creative Commons, so it's simply not mentioned. And then you have 35.9%, which make some reference, the word Creative Commons appears. And then I looked at this in more detail, and you can see that different projects really have different ways of how to deal with Creative Commons licenses. So this is why I called it 1,000 flowers, because there are many, many different approaches. Some say, well, what Creative Commons license we use, it's really up to the individual project partners. Others say, well, we give them a choice between different Creative Commons licenses and the partners can choose between them. And there I see I have one sentence twice. It's also the first time I present about this, that in one case, also Creative Commons was only applied to jointly owned results. But in most cases, there was not one license that was being used. Within one project, different data sets had different Creative Commons licenses. The phrasing was often vague. So they were saying, oh, we will use Creative Commons licenses where appropriate, where possible, where justified. Sometimes they say it in the data management plans, yes, we will use a Creative Commons license, but they didn't tell us which. So they said, yeah, we will use it. So it's not really very valuable if you don't say which one. In other cases, the choice of license was based on the output, the target group, which target group they thought the output was relevant to, or even the data format. In many cases, the data management plans didn't really prescribe something, so they were saying, okay, we will do it, but they were giving recommendations. So in this project, we could do it like that. And in several cases, it was also mentioned that the whole discussion is still not finished. So the data management plan was saying, we in the consortium, we are still discussing this issue. And then there are some data management plans which simply state what are the guidelines from the Commission, but they don't say what the project is actually doing. They're just saying what the EU wants them to do. And in others, different projects used exactly the same wording in different data management plans. So there I have the suspicion that there was some sort of template that they used, because it's exactly or very, very similar wording. So this was some qualitative things that I noticed, and then I had to make a decision for my quantitative analysis, because I wanted to look at how many types of licenses are being used. So I had to make some decisions. And this is kind of the framework that I use to decide what should count and what should not be counted. So I don't think it's necessary that I go through all of this. It's kind of taken from the previous text. Generally, if I apply these criteria, I found that there were 250 data management plans where an analysis could be done to the extent that we could really count on which license they were using. So for instance, if I had just had in the data management plan a sentence, we will use a Creative Commons license, that's not enough to decide which one you use, because that's not stated. So those which have enough information that you can count the license, those were 250. So what kind of licenses were being used? You can see this already, that there is a clear winner, namely the CC BY license, which is a very free license. So the only thing you have to do is basically acknowledge who the author of the original data set was. And then everybody can reuse that as long as they give this information. All the other options were far less popular. So we have then as a second one, I hope you can see that it's big enough, is CC BY share alike. So you can reuse if you share it on the same conditions. Then the next one was CC BY non-commercial, followed by CC BY non-derivative. So you can share it, but you can modify the data. And then there are some mix of licenses, namely CC BY NC-ND, so non-commercial and non-derivative. And this was quite popular, fairly popular, CC BY non-commercial share alike. And then there were some which used the CC0 tool, so releasing it in the public domain. Here is the same, but just in a similar, in a different shape. So here you can see very nicely that CC BY licenses was half of the sample. So it's a huge majority who say, okay, we use CC BY. 125, also exactly 50% of 250. What can we conclude from that? So first of all, I call this in the German word a Wildwuchs. So I try to find a picture which shows you a Wildwuchs. So it's kind of an uncontrolled development in the sense that, first of all, only 36% of DMPs actually mention Creative Commons. But those that do, there is a variety of approaches. And, it's often vaguely worded. So it's kind of every project doing their own thing, basically. But among those DMPs that do mention specific Creative Commons licenses, so those 250, the CC BY license, as I've said, is the clear favorite. And CC BY ND, non-derivative, is the least favorite license. So, my project, it was not big enough that I could actually do some interviews, but that would have been interesting to ask, why do people choose certain licenses? And I don't know, because it's not part of the study. But one could speculate that also non-derivative, it may be that most people are aware that for scientific reuse, often you have to, you use it as part of another study. So actually, you may have to do a derivative. And so if I have non-derivative, the scientific reuse possibilities may be limited. So maybe that's why non-derivative was the least favorite. A number of licenses choose to restrict commercial reuse. So maybe also something that I say, okay, I do it for science. You may reuse it for science, but you may not reuse it for business. And the CC0 tool is not very popular. And even a number of those licenses that are counted for CC0, they are not for the main data, they are for the metadata. And again, taking a little bit my policy hat on, what does this actually mean for policy? First of all, we don't have data for Horizon Europe, right? So all of these data management plans, they are from the previous program, Horizon 2020, but they can maybe help us learn something for Horizon Europe. So first of all, the low number of data management plans that mention Creative Commons. That means that a lot of projects are not familiar with them, in Horizon 2020 at least, or they don't consider them relevant. So that means that we probably need further training and awareness raising, which generally I think is in line with previous findings on data management, that data management as such is something where there is still a lot to be done on information and awareness raising. Now, when there's a big if we just take the 250 licenses projects where there were licenses, 60% of them would be compliant to the Horizon Europe mandate. So obviously, this was the old program, so they had only a recommendation. But if the mandate of Horizon Europe would apply, which of course it doesn't, then 60% would be compliant because they use CC BY or CC0. I would say, it's a very strict mandate in Horizon Europe, only CC BY or CC0. So it has some positive aspects in the sense that you do away with this Wildwuchs, right? You do away with all the projects doing whatever they want because it's now a requirement. And in this sense, it's positive. Negative, and this is maybe the third recommendation, is what will happen to all the content that is currently not in CC BY or CC0. So everything that is licensed with CC BY, share alike, non-commercial, non-derivative, and so on, there are two options. Either in the future, projects will move and license this concept CC BY or CC0, or they will say, okay, if I have the decision between CC BY, CC0, or keeping it closed, I'll just keep it closed. And then, of course, you lose even the limited reusability amounts that these other licenses guarantee. And that, of course, is not probably what the policymaker wants. But all of this is a little bit speculative since for Horizon Europe, we are just now starting with the new calls. So there are no or very few Horizon Europe projects already running. So at the moment, we don't have data from Horizon Europe. But when we do, I think it will be quite interesting to compare what Horizon Europe data management plans say with what Horizon 2020 data management plans say. So that was a very quick run through of the finding. And as I've said, it's quite a specific topic. But if we take the FAIR principles, I think it's an important part of the R in reusability. And that's why I decided to look at it. So that was a little bit the presentation, and I'm happy also, of course, afterwards to circulate it. But maybe do we have some questions?
Thank you, Daniel, for this great talk and this insights of this analysis, how the licenses are used. I wasn't really not aware of it. I was not curious. I was not. For me, it was logical that the most people are using CC BY. I think that also the most people understand what's behind CC BY. And the question is how the people understand. I think there would be other analysis are necessary. The conclusion what you made this maybe goes to have more stricter rules on the licensing, that it maybe comes to more closing the data. Do you think that do you have other solution in beside of making more awareness?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I mean, it's the first time also I share the findings. So maybe, in the future, I should also have a column in this table saying, doesn't say anything about Creative Commons, because actually if we look at all these data management plans, most of them, as I've said in the beginning, they say nothing about it. Only, and that's very important, only those that specify a license, they have a clear preference for CC BY, but most of them, they don't say anything about it. And that's why my recommendation for training and awareness comes from. From the fact that now in Horizon Europe, the choice of licenses is more limited, only to CC BY or CC0. Personally, I'm not so sure this was such a good idea, because I really, I mean, at the moment we really don't know how people will react and whether they will switch to making things available in CC BY or CC 0. And a lot of people also say, I don't want to use CC 0. Or will they just keep things closed? And at the moment, we don't know because the new program isn't far advanced. And I'm not really sure what else we could do, because, for instance, let's give the example of somebody who says, okay, I'm happy to share my data, but not for commercial purposes. They would use a non-commercial, CC BY NC. But they can't do that anymore in Horizon Europe. So what will this person say? Will they say, okay, whatever, then maybe a commercial company can also use it, I don't care that much? Or will they say, no, I really don't want that, and then I keep it closed completely? So I think we really don't have enough data yet to answer the question, because we are too early in Horizon Europe. But I think I definitely think that there are still a lot of people who are not very much aware of, what the different options are, how the different licenses work. And even before I did the certificate, I also wouldn't have considered myself an expert on the different licenses. So that's why I put this information and awareness raising aspect quite central. But so I don't think they will change the rules. I think now the rules are set for Horizon Europe. So that train has passed, to translate from German. So I would say one other thing is monitoring how the situation evolves. And the problem is that we really, even for Horizon 2020, we don't really have so much data. I mean, do we know how many data sets were created in Horizon 2020? Because then we would need to compare this with Horizon Europe, and we would need to see, are there more or less data sets being publicly released? And then we can see whether this is actually a problem or not. So there's a lot also with monitoring and data gathering and analysis, where we are still rather blind. So that's maybe another recommendation, to monitor what's going on carefully.
Yes, I think that's a good point. The monitoring the activities and monitoring how special changes in the programs, so from the rules of participation, have an effect on data sharing and data management itself. Are there any questions or comments to Daniel? Susanne?
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for the great talk. It was very interesting. And I agree with you, because I think that CC0 is also a problem in Germany and Austria. So I think it's not a good way to decide this.
I heard this before. I'm not that deep in the discussion that I know why it's considered a problem. It could be because also with the different definitions that we have between copyright and Urheberrecht, and basically you have this distinction between also moral rights of the author, which the author may not, they are the authors, and the author cannot give them away. So that's why I think maybe in the German-speaking countries, people are reluctant to use CC0. And with CC0, in theory, you don't even have to give any credit you can just take the data. And also in scientific good practice, that you always credit your sources. But if you take it very literally, CC0, you don't even have to do that. And so those may be two reasons why CC0 is in Austria and Germany maybe not so popular. And also in my data collection, you saw that from the table, there were a few CC0 mentioned, but I would have to go back into the data, because a lot of them were these CC0 licenses. They were, or CC0 tool. CC0 is not a license. They were for the metadata. They were not for the data sets themselves. So if you count those that are really CC0 for the data sets, it will be even fewer. Because we would need to go back into the data and see which of the CC0s were for metadata. So there are a lot of interesting projects, I think, that one could still do. And also maybe to promote, because it was quite a bit of work to put together this collection of data management plans. And we said, you know, we could use it for many different things, training, analysis. So maybe I could finish with that to say that the collection is public on PHAIDRA, and you have it on the link. And I think, Susanne, it's also on the homepage of PHAIDRA.
Yes.
And I think it's really quite a resourceful collection, because even in a way, because it's not the best practice collection. So you can actually see what people are doing in real life rather than just the best practice.